Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvighnam Kuru Me Deva Sarvakareshu Sarvada Saraswati Namastubhyam Vande Kamarupini Vidyarambham Karishyami Siddhir Bhatu Me Sada Om Bhurbhuvah Swaha Tatsavitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayat. Om Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwara Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Sahanavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Excellent. Okay, so everyone got a little extra paper, I think. You all good? So for those that are coming in for the first time, just to kind of get you a little up to speed, obviously we won't be able to backtrack everything because then we'll have time for this. Basically, to try to just bring us to where we are, I think in many ways chapter 5 is sort of a big, a pit stop of sorts within the flow of the book. Because at the very beginning of the book, Arjuna is having doubts about whether or not to fight. He's telling Krishna, hey, rather than going and being a warrior, I just want to go run off to the forest and, be a swami and meditate and be peaceful, right? I'm paraphrasing, but. And Krishna says, no, you need to do action, which then causes Arjuna confusion because Krishna likes to contradict himself a lot, or seemingly contradict himself, where in one breath he's saying you need to do action, and action is best, but then in the next breath he's saying to do knowledge, and so Arjuna's like, well, which one am I supposed to do? So chapter 2 is a bit of an overview of the entirety of the Gita. Chapter 3, if you recall, is really talking about karma yoga, about the sense of non-doership of action, and how it's the modes, the gunas that are called, are really the things doing the action. Then that leads us then into chapter 4, where the action then is leading to knowledge. That we can't really start doing what's called jnana, or the path of knowledge, or really understanding knowledge particularly well, until we've trained ourselves, so to speak, with karma. Okay, so the karma then in a certain sense can lead to a certain amount of wisdom or knowledge. Then chapter 5 then is going the next logical step, where now we're going from the jnana, the knowledge, into then renunciation. And then what does your sannyas, okay, or samnyas, depending on how you like to spell it. So renunciation then of ownership of your actions and of these things. So, and then the next chapter we start to go in 6, we start to go into more of the Raja Yoga, which is the meditative phase of things. So we have that sort of sense of renunciation. We are, at least at one level, recognizing we are not the doer of the action. And so now as we start to detach ourselves from our sense of who the I am is, now we can actually start to consider doing meditation. And so it's a very, when you kind of pull back and you look at the arc of it, it starts to kind of make sense how little by little, he's been building, so to speak, a workflow of sorts to get us to the point where we can start to actually even begin to think about meditating. Okay? So that's why I think in this sense, by the end of chapter 5, in many ways, I think we've covered a lot of what was sort of initiated by Arjuna's initial complaint, right? And then as we go, then lots and lots of repetition of concepts within the Gita, certainly. So for those of you that, let's say you decide to come and you're like, well, man, it's already so many chapters in, I'm going to be lost the whole time. you're not, because the same concepts come over and over and over again. It eventually, hopefully sinks into our heads. So with that being said, let me just open it up to kind of, like I said, I don't want this to be a discourse, and certainly not today. So if anyone wants to sort of take the point and sort of start at the beginning and sort of talk about if there's any concepts that you want to talk about or you have questions about, let's make this a discussion. What's Gigi treat this?
I would say that even so this chapter starts with Arjuna asking again, which is a better path, and Krishna still answers. So this is what resonates with most of us in our life, that we know what the right way, or we are often confused, but it's fine to be confused. So maybe that's what my interpretation is. Like Arjuna is confused, and that's still Krishna's perspective. So it's fine. And then he is confused between which path to choose. And eventually this chapter starts with describing the importance of renunciation, but then tells that okay, even though renunciation is better, we place the importance to this world so much that Karma is better than the Jnana.
Okay. Anyone want to add to that?
I think what really sticks out for me in this chapter, and Krishna sets it out right off the bat, the initiative think that knowledge and action are different in, I believe, verse 4. But the wise see them as the same. The person who is established in one path will attain the rewards of both. I see this as him starting to make the bridge of renunciation and action are both part of the same path. You have to do both of them at the same time. And so by practicing one, you'll be able to kind of figure out through that practice that they are connected and both the same. And I think that's what he's trying to make that connection. Right?
Great.
Not really. He's kind of flipping there in lots of ways.
Oh, very good. Anyone else? So there has been a bit of an evolution when he said, you've recommended both, tell me definitively which is better. So he's not quite as lost. He has evolved somewhat, but he's still he's stubborn, right? As we are too. We often will read these books and we'll cherry pick the parts we want. I like that. It's like the buffet style philosophy, right? Well, I like that part. I'll keep that part, but I don't like having to give up that stuff. So I'm not going to listen to that part. I think that's old-fashioned. I don't need that. So he is evolution. He is evolving in that sense.
Yeah.
But I think that's the. I have so many notes on here. Sometimes it's a little overwhelming. Those two. So when he's like in 4, and they'll do a lot of this kind of back and forth, where there's a lot of, description. This is again where we can kind of think about where are we on our evolution. There's a lot of discussions like how do we know if we're evolving in our spirituality? Are we making progress? Hard sometimes, right? And so there's throughout these chapters, there's peppers of, well, what does the guy or a person that has done this look like, right? How do they act? How do they talk? How do they behave? What do they do, right? And so in 3, those who have attained the perfect renunciation are free from any sense of duality. They're unaffected by likes or dislikes and are free from the bondage of self-will.
Yeah. I was going to ask about that. Is that the phrase bondage of self-will? Is that a concept we've talked about before, similar? Because I've never seen that phrase until now.
So it kind of goes back to, it's your internal sense of agency.
Okay.
So it's when you say, so really, well, let's throw this out here. Let's make this a discussion, because really, what is at the core of the entire thing? Like, what is the point of the whole thing? I mean, let's maybe pull it back really high out for a quick second, because we can always go over little things here and there, and certainly it's all wonderful. But at the end of the day, what are we trying to accomplish through this process?
remembering the self at all times, and through that knowledge, help inform our every action to be as, I guess, in line dharmically as possible for our path.
Yeah. Anyone else?
And to get rid of this cycle of life and death.
Right.
Nirvana.
Yeah. Nirvana, freedom, moksha, mukti, goes by many names. So, what bonds us then? Why are we bound?
Our actions.
Desire, karmas,
Actions, desires, karmas, right?
feelings, yeah.
So when we tend to think of ourselves, so to kind of pull back to your question, you'll see within these texts,
Okay.
you'll see self written two ways, one with a lowercase and one with an uppercase S. Okay? So it's an important distinction to pay attention to, because it makes a massive difference in what they're referring to.
Okay.
So when we are writing self, little s self, what is implied by that is our sense of ego, our sense of separateness, that you're Leonard. So when you think I am Leonard, right? You are identifying yourself within that I am circle as your body, your mind, your intellect, your story, your ancestry, your job, that's Leonard, right? Encapsulated. But that is your ego self, your lowercase self. Okay? So when he's talking here, the bondage of self-will, lower s, ego-driven self. Okay? Or in Sanskrit, they call it ahamkara. Okay? Aham meaning like I am, like a sense of I am, like there's an I amness to it, right? The whole point of all of this philosophy, like in a nutshell, I mean, if you just strip away all the extra stuff, right, is like what Samuel said, it's ultimately to start identifying yourself as the higher self, the capital S self, okay? So the capital S self is just the I am. I am. That's it. So that higher I am self is separate then, and that is ultimately our true nature.
Okay.
So that I amness is separate. Anything that can come after the ultimate, so it's the subject. I am. That's it, period, full stop, done. I am. Okay? That's like in Moses, they said, I am that. I am, right? Yahshua talked to Moses or whatever, right? That story in the Bible. So, the idea that we're doing here is to change the internal vision from identifying myself as body, mind, intellect, to when I refer to I am, I'm only referring to the consciousness behind all of that. And so the whole trick, the whole point of all we're talking about is to make that shift. Because what binds us is our identification with body, mind, intellect, all of that, right? And because we identify with it, we're bound by it, because we still think that we are that, whereas we're not that at the highest level. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So that's literally all we're doing, is just changing nothing else changes. It's literally just changing the internal. I've said it before. It's called the sakshi bhav, the internal witness. So you almost are pulled back, like you're observing yourself as the witness, and the Leonard that interacts with the world, the body, the mind, the intellect, your thoughts, your beliefs, everything past I am is not you. It's part of nature. So we're talking about the modes of nature, the gunas. Remember, Rajaguna and all that. Those are not even us either. we're beyond that too. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So we're the consciousness that is reflected in all of that is the truth. So again, an example, and I'll shut up. If we went back in a time machine thousands of years ago, where people were really, really crude and they didn't understand, and we were out at night and we saw the moon, and you asked them, does the moon create its own light? What would they say?
Probably.
Yeah, right? I mean,
Yeah,
duh, right?
Yeah.
You don't see it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily understanding that it's reflected light from the sun. So in the sense, our highest self, in that analogy, there's millions of analogies. The sun is our highest true I am consciousness. And that truest I am consciousness within you is the same as in within me. No different in every single person, and every animal and everything, right? But the sun reflects on the moon, and then it gives the appearance of light. So the consciousness within us gives the appearance of knowing and of sense and identity, right? Like the moon looks like it creates its own light too,
Yes.
but it doesn't. It's reflected light from the sun.
That makes sense.
You understand?
Yeah, no, that's something. Kind
You
of
want to jump in on that?
Like,
Sometimes, Leonard, what helps me is, to get out of the body is I think, well, there goes that girl Satna taking her kids to school. There goes Leonard going to you can tell yourself, there goes Leonard going to the grocery store buying his food. Like, just step out and watch yourself. It's in mundane things that you do. There goes that guy Leonard going to the Bhagavad Gita study circle. You just tell yourself that. And you start to see from a different angle. Otherwise, it's easy to just go locked in, like, I'm just this body doing my things.
There's also the intentional being of the witness sort of meditation practice, where you can do it more formally in a controlled setting and then try to expand that into every moment, where you sit and you just note very objectively, observationally, you're not making any judgments. I see a yellow folder. I see people sitting around me. I hear the fan. That type of instantaneous bringing yourself to this moment and just witnessing. Then you can also move that internally of I see myself, I feel my breath, I feel the tension in my back that's always there, but that doesn't matter right now. All of that does exist and you can witness it without having to make a judgment or have a reaction to it. It's an intentional practice.
Okay.
And don't worry if I just like smoked you. Because it's hard.
This thing's life, like,
It's
Yeah.
really hard to wrap it
Practice.
around. But I think maybe it's good to sort of point out the goal, right? Like, what is the goal? Because otherwise, we're going through this journey in this book,
Yes.
or growing this
Like,
philosophy.
yeah.
What is our endpoint? Like,
Yeah.
what's the purpose, right? And so then, in that sense, the teachings say, or what they say is that, so yes, doing meditation, which again, like I said, is the next chapter, that's practicing for the witness. To stop identifying ourselves as the mind, the body, the intellect, all of that. It's practice. But in the ideal sense, we would have that sensibility all the time,
Okay.
right? It's just as we sit there doing, whatever we're doing, right? Your mind's wandering off and, like, oh my God, just stop, and come back and come back and come back. It's practicing, because then if we can detach ourselves even from our own thoughts, because oftentimes we think of our thoughts as ourself and not realizing that we are also not our thoughts,
Okay.
wow.
right? Because think about it, there's a witness to your thoughts.
You notice your thoughts. Who's noticing?
Who is the observer of the thoughts?
Observing my thoughts.
Well, who is that?
Capital S, self.
Okay.
Yes? There's something. So one moment, so I did this to my daughters. Okay, so picture in your mind's eye an elephant riding a bicycle with a pink ice cream in its trunk. Okay? Doesn't matter. Now think of you paddleboarding on the river over there. Okay? So you saw both of those in the example. So you had thought A and you had thought B.
Yeah.
There was a space in between thought A, there was a space between thought B,
Yeah.
where there was no thought, albeit brief.
Yeah.
But who was the witness of thought A and thought B?
I witnessed.
So who is that? Because there has to be something static in order to monitor change.
Okay. Oh, wow. That's interesting. Okay.
There has to be a riverbed for the river to flow over. There has to be some fixed point in order to observe motion.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. That's interesting. Okay. Wow.
Good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Mind blown a little?
Yes.
Yay! That's
I'm
cool.
trying to, yeah.
Anyone else?
Yeah, with even mind, they rest in Brahman. It was perfect and everywhere the same. I like that part to kind of give me a visual of what is that aspect like? It's like Brahman. Unchanging.
Anyone else?
I see it like something similar, but like not exactly the same. I would say I see it as there's a super soul, and we all have like souls within us, and we are like small part of that super soul. That super soul is called like God. And all of us are like He's the supreme, or like whatever. You could give Him like a million names, and we all are like part of Him. It's like there's this one big planet Earth, but like they need million components to make this planet Earth work, and we all are the million components that are coming from the main source of energy.
So that's a way to look at it. So again, within the Indian philosophical systems, there's sort of dualism, like ISKCON or some of those guys. There's qualified non-dualism, it's called. There's a Ramanujacharya who kind of says, I'm a component of God, right? I'm the same stuff of God, but I'm not God. Like in that sense, there's a separateness, so, if you have a big flame and I will take a stick on fire out of said flame, the flame is still of the same stuff of God, but that bigger flame is we're all pieces, like we're cells in the body of God. So that's the qualified non-dualism of Ramanujacharya. And then the Advaita, right, so non-dual, right, negated, Dvaita means dualism, Advaita, says that we're not any different than that super soul. And so the example that's often used, there's millions of examples. My favorite one is the ocean and the waves, right? That we each have individual existence in the way that individual waves have individual existence, but ultimately we're all made of the same ocean. And so in that sense, we've always been, before we came into a wave, we were ocean. Whilst we're a wave, we're ocean. When the wave crashes, we're ocean. We've never not been ocean. So, so that's kind of a way that sometimes that the Advaita, so this is like Shankaracharya is really kind of the main proponent of that. So that's sort of the process of sort of some of the Indian schools of kind of, but it's hard for us to recognize that in our day-to-day life because we live in dualism.
And even if we consider like we both are the same, like let's say we are the waves and in the ocean. So are all the qualities that I have is the quality that the Supreme has? Like if we both are saying like even my bad qualities are coming from Him.
Ultimately, if everything is of God, then you could say yes. But I think probably more likely people would say that when we have, what are bad qualities becomes a conversation, right? But let's just, for simplicity's sake of the discussion, when we have something, so what makes you separate from me? Because clearly you're not me and I'm not you. So it's nice to sit here in a study group and say, oh, we're all God. We're all Brahman, right? I'm Brahmasi here, right? But what makes me different than you? And then she, Arzu's bringing up like, I want to get off this wheel of samsara because I'm tired, right? So why then can Arzu get liberated but I'm stuck here? Like she dies, I die, she gets to be free and I have to come back.
Maybe your desire is to come back. Maybe you're desiring like $1 billion and you don't get in this lifetime, and maybe you get another birth because you're the consciousness and you want $1 billion, you will get it next life.
Right. So that's where the concept of the Atman, the sort of the highest soul, is the same as the Brahman. I hope that thing's not acting up. Terrified of those cameras now. So it's the removal of. So again, another example that's used a lot is, again, we take the single sun, and let's say we have each one of us has a bucket in front of us filled with water, and let's say we're outside, okay? Leonard's bucket has blue food coloring in it, everyone's has different colors, and some are cleaner, some have mud, some have mold, some, every bucket is slightly different. So each individual bucket is going to reflect the sun differently, but the sun is unaffected. But each individual bucket's going to appear different because of the contents of the water. But the sun is this one and the same. So each one of us are different buckets, so to speak. And we then are reflecting that consciousness to varying degrees. But so the idea is to clean the bucket, right? So that way then, as much as humanly possible, that we're reflecting the sun in the highest level that we can reflect it while we're embodied. That kind of makes sense?
Yeah.
Anyone else? I mean, I don't make any of this up, guys. Like, this is, so I formally take 0% credit for anything that is coming out of my mouth. This is just me rehashing what people much, much wiser than me have said. So, anyone else?
I want to touch on verse 7. Those who follow the path of service, who have completely purified themselves and conquered their senses and self-will, see the self in all creatures and are untouched by any action they perform. I wish they would go a little bit more into here, what does that look like? How do I do those things? Or is that the next chapter's goal?
That's what's coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyone else? So the first sort of beginning, sort of the first 7 or so things, I just want to make sure I'm just trying to pull out different things. The unaffected by likes and dislikes. One of the sort of criticisms, especially like when Western people were coming into India and really learning, like Max Mueller, were learning a lot of the Vedic philosophy. A lot of the criticism of the West is that, is a nihilistic kind of do-nothing kind of ultimate theology, because, your highest goal is to sit here and do nothing, right? And that's, a gross misunderstanding. But I think, another, again, example that is used is when we're unaffected by likes and dislikes, does that mean that we're dead? Are we like dead bodies? Are we trying to rip these things out of us? Or is it somehow, how do we get rid of those? Because obviously we have likes and dislikes.
I think it's just not identifying with the likes and dislikes so much of like, if there's nothing to eat and I have to eat, a sandwich with mustard, which I hate, I will eat that and I will be like, wow, this is so terrible. And I might even make note of wow, I absolutely hate this. I notice my stomach even trying to reject it. But I'm not going to let that stop me from doing that action if I need to do that action. I can still not like it, but just renounce that, my reaction to that dislike.
Yeah. So the renunciation is not about putting on an orange robe and having dreadlocks and all of that, right? Because that's often what people think of. The renunciation can be very much done in the household or in our day-to-day life. It's that we are recognizing that higher I amness is really ultimately the true renunciation, because you're renouncing the sense of doership, you're renouncing the sense of separateness, you're renouncing the sense of false self, right? And then these things that are in the material world that we're talking about, in a certain sense, the reason why people who get to that point are able to get rid of those likes and dislikes is because they're outgrown them. And so they naturally fall off. I mean, think about stuff that we've had in our life. So think about how when you were 7 years old and you were so attached to your teddy bear or, whatever, right? And had your parent taken that away from you or insisted that you give that away, it would have been devastating for you. You'd be complaining about it on TikTok because you have trauma, right? But suddenly, that teddy bear becomes less interesting when you're 14 and you discover, other things, right? And now, like, your mom's like, hey, do we want to donate the teddy bear to Goodwill? And you're like, oh, I didn't even realize we still have that stupid teddy bear. It's kind of like Toy Story, right? Where the little boy, gives up Woody and Buzz at the end, and everyone feels so sorry for Woody and Buzz or whatever, right? He just actually outgrew it. And so I think that in many ways, these sages, spiritually on their evolution, or their journey, is that they just sort of outgrown a lot of this stuff. And it's just like, okay, I don't need this stuff anymore, right? And so it's just a natural falling off. And that, I think, is really the important thing to understand and learn. Again, even if within our own Arjuna selves, right? We may say, well, okay, like jnana yoga, but if we haven't outgrown those desires yet, if we're still that 7-year-old kid longing for the teddy bear, you're not ready for renunciation. You're not ready for the highest jnana, because it's going to be painful to try to do that, right? Versus if you say, no, you know what, realistically, I'm not ready for that. Like, I still want the new Tesla. I still want a fancy house. I still want, the job title. I still want whatever it is within the world that you're hoping to satiate your sense of being. Then you're probably not ready for renunciation yet. It should be just a natural progression of yourself. You're like, I don't really need a new Tesla. I'm good. I don't really need a fancier house. This one works just fine. And so now suddenly you're present with as it is, and now you're detached. You're like, yeah, I like the Tesla, it's nice, but like, if it broke or something, I'm not gonna lose my mind over it, right? So you see there's a natural evolution and flow. So that's why I think there's so much emphasis on karma yoga in the book, because most of us are still very much in that action-oriented phases of our lives. We have kids, we have jobs, we have all this stuff we have to do. And so it's going to be really much harder in many ways for us to be able to internally just naturally have those things fall away. Any thoughts?
How would you define the term action in action?
Yeah, so chapter 3, read it. I don't want to spend too much time because it'll kind of bog us down. So again, the concept of it's about the concept of agency. Do I identify myself? Anything you do is going to be action, including your thoughts, right? Whether it's thoughts, words, deeds, mind, intellect, all is action. The whole point of, is it karma or is it karma yoga, is the attitude through which you do it. That's the key. So this, a thief with a knife stabs you in the stomach to do harm. A surgeon stabs you in the stomach to save your life. The action can be the same. The intention is completely different, right? So what may appear as an action that's harmful on one level may actually end up not being harmful in the bigger picture, because we don't necessarily know the intention of the doer, right? So when you're acting, it's how are you acting? Are you acting towards egotistical ends, or are you pulling back, again, ideally as the witness, and saying, it's not me that does, it's the body, it's the mind, it's the intellect, it's the ego that is doing this, the gunas, the modes, that is doing this stuff within the world, but the I is not, it's unaffected. And that's the difference.
So
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so I could still buy a Tesla, and if I'm not attached to the Tesla, I could still renounce,
Absolutely.
You could
Absolutely.
drive out the lot and crash it.
Yeah, and I don't care if it crashes or someone steals it, still I'm renounced because I'm not attached to that materialistic possession.
100%. And that's again where there's this big misunderstanding of the concept of renunciation, right? Like, oh, if I'm a renunciate, or if I have that sense of renunciation, then I have to give up everything, I have to sell my stuff, I have to live in an ochre robe and be a celibate, and all that stuff, be a swami, right? And that's not the case. Only you will actually truly know in your heart of hearts, are you actually attached to that Tesla or not, right? If you're like, yeah, of course, no one wants their Tesla to get ruined, of course, right? No one would want that. But you're like, well, if it comes, cool. If it doesn't, cool. It is what it is, right? If the job promotion comes, cool. I did my best. If they recognize my work at work and I get the job promotion, cool. If they didn't, okay, cool. You see, So you're not attached to that. You just do what it needs to be done, and then you let go. That's karma yoga. Anyone else? All right, let's move forward then. Do you want to say anything?
No.
Okay. Let me see. So just really fast, just again, just sort of on these papers, I just wanted just to point out. So sannyasa just means, nyasa means renunciation, but so samkhya is the more theoretical, the jnana yoga, the karma is more that sort of practice based. And then what the ideal is that we move from the desire prompted activities to selfless activity to the more contemplative life, okay? And then I just put as a review for some folks that haven't come in the past, they talk about in 3, that sense of duality. So I just wanted to put that again. These are very common things that come up again and again and again and again throughout these kind of books and stuff. So anyway, I just wanted to point those out. We don't need to go through them. But please keep those, by the way. They're good to take. Okay. So let's see. So the next kind of chunk that they talk about is kind of 8 through 22. Sort of kind of this the next sort of section of topics where again it's a lot of it's kind of redundant in many ways. That's why I think that we can have a discussion. Those who know this in truth. So now again, now listen to this phrase. Now, given what we've talked about later, those who know this truth, whose consciousness is unified, think always, I am not the doer. While seeing or hearing, touching or smelling, eating, moving about or sleeping, breathing, speaking, letting go or holding on, opening and closing the eyes, they understand that these are only the movements of the senses among sense objects.
Okay.
Do you see that? So again, that's that witness attitude, that sakshibhav, okay? That these are just things, your pure awareness is not doing any action. There is a fixed point that is watching all of the changes. That fixed point is you. Anyone want to comment on that?
What helps me visualize that is going back to the symbolism of the 5 horses being the senses, and then the lower self and the higher self being Arjuna and Krishna. So you think about that verse in particular, when I think about those are the 5 horses, those are my senses. What am I seeing, tasting, smelling? It helps me visualize it in that way.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great point. Thank you. Anyone else? The other thing that I like about that too, one thing that they talk about in some other philosophical texts is the pull of the senses is extremely strong because, kind of like saying it jokingly, the senses are not a sense. Meaning the vision wants to see nice things. The taste wants to taste good things. The touch wants to touch nice things. They're going to naturally be pulled towards those things. That's what they do, those tattvas they call them, right? That's what they're after. They're like moths to a flame, right? But they're still within the realm of gunas. They're still not us, right? So that's the hard part, is because so often we identify with even our senses. I feel that sense of, we always make jokes, like when we go to Casa de Luz, I don't like their food because it tastes bland. And she's like, but it's hungry, but it's healthy. And I'm like, I know, but it tastes like crap.
No, I don't say it's healthy, it's sadly.
Yeah,
It's very
it's very pure. And she's right. But my
And you're right too, though. What a great karma yoga of sitting in, we're gonna sit and eat this food, and we can it doesn't, it's very fibrous.
It's very good for me. So, so the senses are going to go for sensory input, right? That's just what they do. But, if we can pull them and realize that, okay, yeah, these things are going to pull towards those, and not even identifying with the sensory pull. Again, because we're not identifying with that either within ourselves. That's hard, but that's ultimately what we have to do, right?
Practice with, simple foods, you can really apply it to the big stuff.
Right, exactly. And then, 10, those who surrender to Brahman, all selfish attachments are like a leaf of a lotus floating clean and dry in water, right? For those, does everyone understand? I know many of us in this room do. For those of us that understand the lotus symbolism in Eastern philosophy and religions, does anyone not understand the lotus symbolism? Because I think it's a good symbol. There's a reason it's popular. Every goddess is sitting on a lotus flower. You'll see many organizations, like spiritual organizations in India, Buddhism as well. There's a lotus flower. Do we know the lotus flower symbolism?
Two things. It grows like on something dead.
Mud.
And
Close.
And then like Brahman, out of his stomach came.
Yeah, but why the lotus and not a rose? Why the lotus and not a jasmine flower?
No mud, no lotus.
Right. So who wants to explain?
Yeah, I don't know.
Essentially, from the gooey grossness of life comes this beautiful lotus that would never exist unless it had that. And the lotus is significant in that the muddy water can hit it, but it just rolls off of it, almost like water off a duck bath. A lotus works a very similar way. So it's a great symbolism of a spiritual aspirant to have a lotus. I can exist amongst the world and still be this lotus. Unaffected.
Yeah. So it grows from the mud. Lotuses don't grow in fresh spring water flowing down the Himalayas, and it's crispy, clear, delicious water. It's the thick, gross, stagnant in these ponds, and then you get these beautiful leaves, right? So it's growing into this beautiful flower amongst the murk and mud of the world, and then not touched by the dirty water, within its growth. So being kind of transcending those things, being in the world and not of it, to use a Christian phrase, right? All right, cool. Let me see. Run through that. Oh yeah, I wanted to just so this is to kind of go the fourth bullet point where it's talking about, again, I think we touched on that already, that witness attitude, so that way you have it. There's two terms, the paramartika drishti. Drishti just means point of focus. And then the vyavaharika drishti is the two different views. And so if you see next to it, I wrote the higher versus the lower. So when we're flipping our sense of seeing while we're in the world, right? And I think this is an important thing to kind of understand, is that we on our day-to-day life, when we're in illusion, when we're in delusion, right? We are in that lower, the Vyavaharika drishti. So when we see, the example would be, if I see a golden bracelet, so a bangle is a bracelet, okay? If I see a golden bracelet, all I'm seeing typically is the bracelet, right? So, that's a pretty bracelet, okay? With the higher vision, I'm flipping my vision internally. And now I can flip it and I can see the gold. And then I can flip my vision and see the bracelet. Do you see how it's a matter of just flipping back and forth your internal mind's eye between the two things to recognize gold, to recognize bracelet, or to recognize mud, to recognize pot, right? So in understanding that the bracelet, could you have the bracelet exist without gold? Would that bracelet exist without gold? Like if I have a gold, 100% pure gold bracelet, and I just go, gold disappears.
Bracelet's gone.
Where's the bracelet?
It's gone.
Doesn't exist. So bracelet doesn't have independent existence outside of the gold, right? Now, if I say, we get rid of bracelet, it's a gold bracelet. Get rid of bracelet, can the gold still exist? Does the gold still there?
Yeah, sure, I'm bracelet.
You may not have embraced it, but you still have it. Right? So it's flipping the vision between the two sides, right? So in a similar way, that's how we look at the world. We are the cosmos. Is that we have, on one hand, we see God everywhere, but we can also see that there's a car coming across the street not to step in front of it. Right?
There's an Islamic phrase that I really like. It says, trust in Allah, but tie your camel.
Yeah.
What? Like what? Trust in Allah, but tie your camel.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, so, yeah. All right, any comments on that?
Yeah, it's just being aware of what is perishable and what is imperishable. So the bracelet here is perishable, but the gold is not.
Right. Right. Anyone else? Perishable in the sense that it has dependent existence,
Yeah.
not independent existence. So that's the thing that I think oftentimes is confusing when you read Vedanta, right? It says, well, we don't exist. And it's like, well, we do.
Impermanent, yeah. That's
Impermanently.
Yeah.
We exist in the way the Bengal exists. But we meaning our individual egos. But the highest truth of us is we exist as the gold. But the problem is that you're identified as being a Bengal, I'm identified as being a necklace. And so there it is, the confusion. Anyone else?
I'd like to touch more on the next part of the City of Nine Gates.
Yes.
I've actually not really seen the description of the body this way. It sounds that way. We can just talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah, yes, so I did make note of it on your little thing to clarify that.
That's about.
Yeah, so it's, 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nostrils, 1 nose, and then two gates in the pelvis. We'll just leave it at that. So in that sense, I don't know really spends a ton of time on that and why they use that phraseology, specifically for that particular thing. I think what it is that, so like, for example, when they use the word like the Purusha, I think, which we all have gone over, it's, it's the dweller within the city. I think there's some breakdown in the Sanskrit, I can't remember, but it's the dweller within the city, like, the internal dweller, the indweller, right? And so I think in this particular analogy, they're, using that just in the sense, I think, to point that out, right? That it's, the body is basically like a vehicle.
Yeah. I guess I like this phraseology because it makes the senses a gateway, which a gate can open and close. And you can choose to let things in or not.
Yeah.
So being the master of those gates.
You cannot choose the thing to not enter because senses are going to do their work.
Right.
But then you can choose not to be affected by what enters it.
Right.
Right. And that's, again, we go back to the horses, right? The horses are the senses, the mind is the rose, and then the intellect is the charioteer, right? To sort of guide those horses to proper channels. Another example that is given in some texts that I like personally better than the City of Nine Gates is where they'll use the example of a pot that has, like, if you take a pot, like a sealed pot, and you have 5 separate holes in the sides of the pot in wherever locations, and then you put a candle in the middle of the pot, and you take it into a dark room, right? That only where the light pokes out through the holes in the pot is the only places where you'll be able to have any illumination within that room. And then anything between this hole and this hole's light beams in that dark room are going to be dark, right? And so that example is used sometimes to talk about the senses, right? That the limitation of the senses is just what is through the eyes can't taste the hollow. The ears can't, feel, the blank, and so on and so forth. So to really, I always liked it because it's like, just to understand there's so much out there that is beyond our senses that we tend to think of all this as, well, I can see, smell, hear, touch, so on is all that's real.
But it's actually very limited.
It's extremely limited, right? If we had bat sense and we had sonar and we could see radio waves and all this other stuff that we know scientifically is out there. But yet, again, if we went in that same time machine and said, oh, there's these invisible waves coming through and it's doing it, and look at you like you're a madman, right? So I've always liked
I like that analogy a lot.
Yeah, I've always found it more helpful than this one for whatever reason.
The next part of that I also did want to talk about. They are not driven to act, nor do they involve others in action. And the involving others in action, I think, is a little bit confusing to me.
They're not driven to act, nor do they involve others.
Where's that?
This is verse
13.
yeah,
Verse 13.
End of 13.
Yeah.
So they, the master of the city of nine gates, are not
Yeah.
driven to act, nor do they involve others in action. What does that mean, involve others in action? Is it like get them involved
I
with
feel
your
like
own
when we want people to do something,
Yeah.
like when teachers try to get their students to do what they want them to do, or we want our kids to do what we want them to do, or politically we want people to do what we want them, any desire for something to happen. I feel like that's that one. Yeah.
So they do not involve others.
Exactly.
I think in the sense of, from the sense of attachment,
Okay, that makes more sense.
right? Like, I think it's, again, it kind of goes back to almost that Zen kind of sense of these, like, even though they're not using that same sort of phrasing, it's just they accept what is.
Okay.
Whether it comes, it goes, it happens, it doesn't happen. They're so sort of settled in their highest sense of self that if, I'm going to do this thing and you want to help, cool. If you don't, then cool. So it's not like, oh my God, like, I'm getting attached to that and then
I hope Samwise helps out today. I hope they get it.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So I think that's the way I kind of interpret it. Anyone else?
That clears it up. Thank you.
Okay. And then again, so in 15, again, this is kind of, we talked about a little bit of this of like, the sense of, we talked a lot about kind of the quote unquote sin last time. But again, this kind of even, I think, circles back. I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Aryan.
Aryan, that's right, sorry. The Lord does not, in 15, the Lord does not partake in the good and evil deeds of any person, right? Judgment is clouded when wisdom is obscured by ignorance, right? But then ignorance, then in turn, is destroyed by the knowledge of self within. So, again, this is why we sometimes do not the best things, because it's basically due to our ignorance of our higher self. So it's not sort of that sort of concept of like an original sin or any of that kind of stuff. It's just that we erroneously ascribe an action that's going to bring us what we think is going to be either attaining happiness or getting away from what we perceive as unhappiness. But if we've attached ourselves to our ego, right, then that's going to lead us potentially to do things that we maybe aren't ideal to do, right? But it's that. But ultimately, and again, we talked about this in the past, at the very highest levels, when you're transcendent of all that, and you've woken up from the proverbial dream, and you're not identifying with the modes, the gunas, and you realize that it was just the modes and the gunas that were acting, then you're free of even those karmas because you are not the actor. That's why it says early on, he who thinks he kills or that he is killed, neither understands correctly. Both are wrong, right? Now, while we're living in this world, we still have to tie up our camel, right? So while I'm still in the dream, I'm still subject to the consequences of my actions. But the moment I go from the dream state to the waker state, right, all of that's gone. I want to leave a few minutes at the end. There's a thing that there's a very famous chant. It's called the Nirvana Shaptakam that I want to listen to, and you guys can read the words as we go through it. It's only 4 minutes long. I have a recording. I like it. It's because I think as you read the words in English and you'll recognize it, it helps a lot of this stuff come together, and you kind of it gives a good understanding.
Yeah, where they get it from? It's really good. I mean, where did you get it from? Like,
Oh, it's just a famous shlok, right?
oh, is it from?
Yeah, yeah, you'll recognize it. It's a Shivo. I can't sing right now. Shivo hum, Shivo yam shangalala, Shivo hum, Shivo hum. You know the song. You've heard it 1,000 times and you just
Oh,
know it.
okay.
So I want to, it's about, like I said, I want to save a few minutes for that because I think it's really great. It's very beautiful and it's on like Pandora and stuff if you ever want to listen to it. So, okay. So we left off kind of around 18, 19, 20, somewhere in there. Any comments on that or any questions or any sort of things that this is kind of a lot of redundancy in this chapter, you know, we talked a lot about it, so I don't know that we have to get so hung up on every single little line. I think this is a very conceptual chapter in many ways. So, I mean, I'm certainly happy just to talk if you want to do that. Or
one question I have is that we discussed last time about that why does the God need this Leela?
Mhm.
So I think in the 15, let's say the Lord does not partake in the good or the evil deed of any person. So that same question that okay, if God is not partaking or not doing anything about all which is going on, then again the main question that why this everything is happening.
Yeah.
So I think the other discussion was that it's God's pastime. That
Right.
everything is
Yeah,
happening,
like this
that
book says
Leela.
this as God's pastime.
Right. Right.
So
But here it says that it's not doesn't partake in the good. or the
Yeah,
evil.
last time I remember we had this like about verse Leela. So I went back and I was kind of googling a lot of stuff, and then I came across this really beautiful like part of Rig Veda. It's called Nasadiya Sutta. It has 7 verses, and it kind of starts with about a time when even existence was not there and non-existence was not there, and there was darkness filled with darkness, and there was void, and around it was void, like there was literally nothing, and nothing also did not exist. At that time, the one, like some kind of consciousness, I think we could call it Brahman or very primordial state of that consciousness, it emerged, and from that, like there was desire, and then from that the mind was created, the mind, not your mind, my mind, or our mind, it's the mind which is created. And why was it created? Because it kind of wanted to manifest itself, and the desire like to be present, desire to exist, created the mind, and the mind created the illusion and everything that we know of. And then they continue to the verse 5 and 6, and the last verse was something that blew my mind. So they kind of go on explaining their hypothesis of how everything came to be, and then the last line they just say if they they ask a bunch of questions: where did it come from? When did it happen? How did it happen? And all that. And then in the last verse, they kind of say that if there is a witness to it in highest of highest consciousness, or even in a higher platforms, whoever it is, if he has witnessed it, they have witnessed it, they would know, or perhaps even they do not know. So they kind of put a limitation on human understanding that we only can see to a certain level, because everything that we are came out of that desire, the ichcha. It came out of that desire, and until we cross that barrier of letting the desire go, we cannot actually see the truest form of it. So it was very humbling to accept that we may never know why this Maya is there, why this desire is there, until we actually can get rid of it, to see the true consciousness, and maybe then we can understand, or maybe even then we cannot. So it was very beautiful and humbling.
That's
That's
thank you.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So I would recommend, like, if you have, more questions, there's Nasudya Sutta.
Are you part of the WhatsApp group chat or something? Because you should totally send whatever that is.
Yeah, you can send the link to that course that you said to send.
I've probably sent you. I've sent you
send
an
a
invite.
video and that helped.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I think I am. There's a community.
Yeah, it's just like a group, like a WhatsApp group that you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
add. I'm pretty sure I added you.
Yeah, I sent I found like a couple of links which
Cool.
are very beautiful.
Yeah.
Written.
I would love to.
Great. That was cool. Thank you. Yeah. Yes. All right. Any other sort of maybe just open it up? I mean, because I think we kind of got the idea. And then the last few sort of lines, and then we'll just circle back just to kind of make sure we get through the end, so to speak, is really kind of from 27 on is going to start really sort of phasing us into the next chapter, which is going to be more of a meditation, the yoga meditation of beyond the yoga. So, so wait, I don't know that we really need to worry too much about that because they're going to go, pretty much into pretty good detail with that. But are we pretty clear about renunciation and how that works and all of that stuff? Do we have any sort of lingering doubts or whatever?
I can say I was telling others before this, and I really, really appreciated reading this chapter this week, as I've had a very heavy karma yoga week of I had a 14-hour work day, I had a 10-hour work day, 12-hour work day, and my work is mental health, and gotta get that documentation has to be done day up. So that sort of, I just have to get it done. And I have a little mantra that I've been using a lot that's been very helpful, which is, I do what I can and that is all I can do. And that just lets me let go from that point. And whatever anyone else says, there's a work group chat and people get really catty in that. And if they say, Samwise, you need to do that, I'll be like, okay, I'll get that done. Whatever needs to get done, I'll do what I can, that's the best I can do. And that practice of renunciation, no matter what externally is going on, has to be a conscious practice. And I really appreciated having this book as a external reminder to that practice. That's mine.
Anything else? Either, you guys want to chime in and, you're doing some Vedanta online, any thoughts on all this? Was this all review, or you had this all down, or you
No,
want
I
to
just,
please jump in, comment?
yeah, thank you. I appreciate being here and having a local community. That was really, really nice. So, yeah, thank you for having me.
Great, it's a pleasure. All right, anything else? All right, then let's listen again. There are many versions of this online. Some are very boomy and very kind of warlike because it's about kind of Shiva, and Shiva is the destroyer god, and so sometimes the interpretation is very heavy and rough with lots of kettlebells and drums and things like that. I chose a not so heavy duty version of it. But yeah, it's 4 minutes, and I think if you read the translations, I think it'll make a lot of what we've talked about really kind of consolidate and make sense. So, at least I hope so. And it's pretty too, so.
चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् न मे द्वेषरागौ न मे लोभमोहो मदो नैव मे नैव मात्सर्यभावः न धर्मो न चार्थो न कामो न मोक्षः चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् न पुण्यं न पापं न सौख्यं न दुःखम् न मन्त्रो न तीर्थं न वेदा न यज्ञः अहं भोजनं नैव भोज्यं न भोक्ता चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् न मृत्युर्न शङ्का न मे जातिभेदः पिता नैव मे नैव माता न जन्मः न बन्धुर्न मित्रं गुरुर्नैव शिष्यम् चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् अहं निर्विकल्पो निराकाररूपो विभुत्वाच्च सर्वत्र सर्वेन्द्रियाणां न चासङ्गतं नैव मुक्तिर्न मेयः चिदानन्दरूप शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम्
You have to share this with me. It is so nice.
So beautiful.
I'm just gonna listen to it in loop now.
Right. It's the. I mean, if you look it up, it's if you just put it like Spotify or Pandora.
No, but I like this version. Like
This
this
version.
version.
Nice.
Yeah, I'll try to send
Like,
it.
Is
even, like,
Pandora?
even if you listen to like Gayatri Mantra, everybody has that different, music or
Exactly.
sound. This
Yeah.
like, it just brings it all together.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
agree.
yeah, I like it too. The singer of it, or at least on here, it's BEEKE. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
That's my story for singing too.
Okay.
So I think if you really understand that, that really encapsulates pretty much everything, you know. So that's why I like it.
Yeah. I like that it goes into that Gyan Yoga thing that you be aware of yourself and thing. But I really I think even Gita tells us that Karma Yoga is better than the Gyan Yoga. It's because a person who knows Gyan Yoga can only apply it to himself or herself. But a person who knows Gyan Yoga and does Karma Yoga applies that thing for others as well. So,
Yeah.
like helping just one person, but helping so many of us.
Right.
So that's what Karma Yoga is better. And it's just so better.
Perfect. Anything else? That's my comments or anything.
I've heard this from the Sounds of Isha Foundation, like the Sadhguru thing. I think they have another version of the same thing, which I heard like a long time back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do have a whole there's actually we had it a long time ago. It's a sacred chant of Shiva. They have a really nice one. And they have one that's very ethereal. In fact, I have it on this playlist, but it's not as tight and crisp. It's almost like it makes you go to sleep. Like I used to listen to it a lot to just go to sleep because it was just so relaxing. So I wanted one that was like we could follow, not take 10 minutes.
Yeah, that has like 10 minutes. or
Yeah.
more than that.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I liked it. I thought it was really pretty. And like I said, there's the big drum ones, where you feel like Shiva's coming with the Rudras to come do battle with you. But I felt like this was more meditative. So. All right. Well, cool. All right, well, thank you everyone. Let's do our closing prayers. And Shishyate Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhagavani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Durghavak Bhavet Om Asastoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Karaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thanks again. If any of you are interested, I do have some old or if either of you guys in the new, if you want to come back, and if you want, I do have somewhere in there, I do have some of the old chapter paperwork. If you weren't here last time, so if you want that, I can maybe have some extra copies if you're interested. If you're not, I'm not offended. I just print out a bunch and then, so if you want any of those, I have some copies somewhere on the folder. So, all right, anything else?
Does anybody else have any like chants or mantras that they really like to come back to and totally share those with the group? Because I always like to find more. My personal favorite is the Hanuman Chalisa. I've been dedicated the past year and a half to memorizing it, and it's my daily I need something to help me with my karma yoga. I'll just start chanting.
That's very powerful. Maybe you can maybe after we're done with Gita, we can read
The Ramayana?
so they're kind of it's actually about love and devotion that you can have. So it's more bhakti yoga.
Yeah.
Which one?
So they're kind of like that.
One of the chapter in
One
Ramayana.
of the chapter.
No.
So when you're talking about chants, I think my chants change depending on my senses.
Yeah,
We used to have so many back in the day, our CD collection
Oh.
in those days.
Yeah, they've all gone away. Actually, I have this huge playlist. It's like legends and chants, and there's so many.
Yeah,
it's
so
endless. Yeah, Hulu chants is obviously very popular. I mean, a lot of these are pretty standardized chants that that are pretty typical. That's why I chose them. They're not too specific to one god or one guru, or in that sense. Kind of the basics, if that makes sense. There's one that I think I don't have it on here, that I think is a good one. It's Maham Ritum Jaya Mantra, It's kind of like a protection one. I could when we
Annie is always appreciated.
Yeah, that's a really popular one. That's a very famous one.
Say that before you get on a plane.
Yeah, it's like a protection one.
Yeah.
In fact, it's kind of funny because I've been listening